It's Tuesday, the 2nd of March, 2021. Welcome back to the Match Reaction show. On this show, we are responding to what we just watched, which was Blackpool versus Crewe at Bloomfield Road. And I'm John Aspinall, and this is the Seasiders podcast match reaction show. Blackpool 1, Crewe 1. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back to the Seasiders podcast match reaction show. Welcome to everybody on the stream. Matt's just gone as we into the building. I don't know what's happening there. Welcome, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm very well, John. Would have been happy if we'd have managed to get 3 points, but I think overall we probably can't complain tonight. We came up against decent opposition.
What's that song by the Hives? Something like, I didn't mean to tell you so, something like that. Anyway. Welcome, Tim.
Evening.
How are you doing?
I think the Hives was after my time, I think. I was too old for that one.
Oh, Matt's just reappeared. What happened there?
As if by magic.
I had the old power cable plugged into the laptop without the power on. That's always a good thing.
Schoolboy error.
Oh dear.
Well, apologies, listeners. We are a tad late, but we were thrown a bit by the extra 10 minutes by the farcical situation of the linesman going down. Has anyone ever seen anything like that before?
I do remember on years and years ago. Anybody who's played Sunday League football, and you might know him. Tim, a guy called Peter Bartley was a referee on a Sunday morning years ago.
Penalty Pete.
Yeah, and he was called out of the crowd once at Bloomfield Road to become the fourth official. I remember that. Yeah. So we're talking a long time ago, though. Those were sort of vintage.
He was about 5'2", wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember that name actually. Phil's here. Welcome, Phil. He's dissing you, Matt, straight away, giving you a big.
I can't blame him. Got to hold my hands up there, really.
Oh, right. So how's everyone feel after that? I'm relieved.
Relieved, I think.
Yeah,
Probably the word, yeah.
Definitely.
It was an odd one. Certainly was. Let's have a look at the team then first. As you were, Nick, from the last match.
Yeah, and it's not too often we go with consecutive same 11 lineups, is it? There's normally one or two changes, but it was a very good. Well, I didn't see the performance on Saturday, but by all accounts and listening to you guys on the pod, it was a decent performance. So I can understand why he did it. I think the main talking point was probably on the substitutes bench with the return of CJ Hamilton, which was great to see. I thought Gary Medine might have been involved, but obviously just not quite ready yet, unfortunately. But yeah, no surprises overall, really, I don't think, after Saturday's result.
Tim, just before we come to you, I'll just read the lineup. It was Maxwell, Gabriel, Bollard, Thornley, Garbutt, Virtue, Stewart, Ward, Kakai, Sims, and Yates. A bit of chat on the old WhatsApp group about maybe he should have rotated a couple of players. I was in the keep it in the same team camp myself. How are you feeling?
I wasn't. I thought he would. I thought I took it that the decision to rest Dougal on Saturday was a suggestion that he was probably going to introduce an element of rotation with the games coming as thick and fast as they are. So I was actually quite surprised to see that he wasn't starting. But equally, I can understand why I might have wanted to keep the same team. But I just felt that in a game like tonight, because knowing that Crewe were a possession-based side, and didn't we just see that? That we wanted players who could keep hold of the ball for us, and I think as we went on to see that we gave the ball away far too cheaply throughout the game, to be honest. and someone like Dougal would maybe have just settled us down a bit. So I personally think it was a mistake not to start him tonight. And again, as Nick says, it was great to see CJ back on the subs bench. That was a Philip.
And that was a Timism.
A Timism, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's good to see CJ back, but he just played him in the wrong position for me. But we'll come on to that next. Matt, just over to you then on the lineup. Just before I forget about this. Crewe Alexandra are the new Joel Garner for Chizzy. The amount of times he was going on about him, it was starting to get on my tits, frankly.
I thought you'd be happy, John, after your pre-season prediction.
They're my second love, Nicholas. My second love.
The one thing, I've got to say, a big shout out for Colin Greenall, because for all Chizzy's deficiencies and getting everything wrong, good. Colin's there, right, straight away in there, correcting him, calling it right all the time.
Yes,
and
he's very good.
Very, very good.
Yeah, he's definitely the pro in the ranks, isn't he, on the sidelines, definitely.
Not as bad as that Charlton pairing. But Matt, what was your opinions on the lineup? Do you think you agree with what Tim's just said there?
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a little bit of rotation, because that's what he's done over the last 18 games or so, whatever it's been recently. So great to see CJ Hamilton back. There was a piece of me that was actually thinking, I just hope he doesn't actually get onto the pitch, because I'd rather he just had another week and it just meant that we were going to be winning the game comfortably without him having to come on. But we'll talk about him obviously entering the fray later on. But yeah, no real surprises. I guess it was a case of as you were, or maybe Dougal for possibly one of Virtue or Stewart, I would have thought. But no real sort of shock for me anyway.
Thanks, Eddie, for your comment there. He said, in hindsight, probably should have tinkered old Courage. He gets it in the net when he does, and when he doesn't tinker, tougher on amount of games we have to play. I think that's a fair point from Eddie there, Tim, that he's sometimes damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Yeah,
to be honest, it's not particularly a criticism of the team. I did sort of balance it by saying I could see why he started with the team that he did. I just had it in my head because Dougal had played so well in the game before and then got benched. I thought that he had a plan to do some rotation offered for tonight, so I was just expecting him to be there. But listen, it's not a criticism as such, but it is. These games are going to, as Eddie said, we've had to come back from London. I don't know whether we did it on the night or whatever, but it's a long journey down there, a long journey back. And then we're and it was a full on, as we went on to see, it was a full on game tonight, wasn't it? And sometimes just a fresh pair of legs, whether it's starting or coming off the bench, is quite important, and particularly when it's somebody who's has been somewhat of a talisman for us in relation to his own performances. I was just surprised he wasn't involved.
Bison's is having a dig there, Tim. Dougal in place of who?
Probably central midfielder, Bison's, surprisingly.
Touche, Timothy, touche. Right, let's go into the game. We're Blackpool FC feed. So Crewe started pretty brightly, gentlemen.
Very brightly, yeah. Right from the kickoff, they were at it, weren't they, on the front foot? And we just, I don't know, we couldn't get hold of the ball, and we were chasing shadows. We were getting pulled out of position defensively. The ball in behind the back was happening, and we just looked a little bit shaky. And first, probably half an hour really before we really got our foot on the ball and started to, have any sort of pressure in the final third. You've got to give Crewe credit; they were a very decent side, and they knocked the ball about. And we kind of know that's coming, but you still think after the run we've been on, we'd have been a bit more involved in those opening exchanges, and you were just really waiting for a goal to happen, weren't you? Thankfully, when it did, it was ruled offside, but it was no surprise that they put the ball in the net because it was coming definitely.
John Scott's just asked there, and I think Sims got hauled down in the box in the second minute. That was on my show notes. Matt, you're nodding your head there. I think it's because it's so early in the game, he's not giving it or not even considered giving it.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those. Obviously, we don't have the the hindsight of any sort of replays or anything like that. But it looked fairly similar to Saturdays in many respects, didn't it?
Exactly the same.
And a different referee might have given it. So there's a possibility, but I don't think we made much of a sort of a meal about it, did we at all? We didn't sort of contest any sort of decision at all. But in regards to how we started the game, it was. I think it was Thornley that basically passed the ball from the kickoff to their midfield or whatever, and that would just set the tone for me. And it never really got any better. We were our own worst enemies for the first 15 to 20 minutes. As good as Crewe did play and start, we just never kept the ball when we did get it. We were playing silly passes into the midfield where everyone was sort of on the back foot and not sort of ready for it. I thought the two centre halves and the goalkeeper's distribution from minute 1 to minute 90 or minute 100 or whatever it was tonight was poor. And as good a side as Crewe and the top half of the division is, we were lucky to be in the game still after 20-25 minutes. We could have easily been a goal or two behind. Poor start for us, really.
Yeah, I think they transferred the half-time bongs to
I was just going to say pre-match bongs, yeah.
They've got things the wrong way around this time. Just not the second half quite brightly. Phil's just said there, nothing wrong with the starting lineup. The tempo was too slow. They were what Crutchley promised. We would be like high press and high intensity. And Tim, that's hard to disagree, really, in the first 15 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I think there was a chasm in class, wasn't there, in that first 30 minutes? And it actually got quite embarrassing at stages because they were so comfortable on the ball, clearly playing to a very defined game plan. And we were running around like headless chickens. And when we got the ball, we were like lashing it away, or it was hitting the backs of players or bouncing off knees, or we were miscontrolling it, giving it away. I think somebody said in the chat that it might have been Bollard with that first pass, just to not to have too much of a dig at Thornley, but equally his distribution throughout the game was woeful. But he wasn't the only one. You look around the team and it didn't matter where we were playing. We just didn't seem in that first 30 minutes. We didn't look like we had a clue, and they looked like they were two divisions above us. It looked like a FA Cup match where you've got a team that's completely outclassing the other. And that's all credit to them, to be fair. I don't think it was that we were that bad. I think they were that good in that first 30. And as others have said, we could have been, I think, it wouldn't have been flattering to them to be 2-0 up after 30 minutes.
Nick, obviously we've waxed lyrical about Crewe's possession, high press, passing game, but they also mixed it up really well, and it was very dangerous, that ball over the top throughout the game, and we didn't learn from it at all.
No, we didn't.
Or couldn't cope with it even.
No, we couldn't, and Thornley in particular. And it's something we've seen before. And to be fair to him, he's done well since he's come back in, but did look shaky at times tonight. And yeah, they mixed it up, and we couldn't cope with it. And thankfully, I don't know whether it was Donovan Daniels went off injured.
Yeah.
Seemed to change a little bit, and we just managed to get a bit of a foothold in the game. And sometimes you just need that, a couple of minutes of being on the ball, and then you can start to press a bit. And I suppose other than the goal, probably the main highlight, I think, was Garbutt's delivery, not just for the goal, but in general from set pieces. He was, his corners, and I think he whipped a free kick in as well, which it wasn't his fault that nobody ran onto it. It was actually a brilliant delivery that he whipped in onto the penalty spot, and everybody just stood still. But as the half went on, we did manage to get a bit more of a foothold, and probably fortunately managed to take the lead with the header from Mr. Bollard.
Just quickly rewinding, just before I talk about the goal, Matt, did you notice on their offside goal, it was a great move, and it was a combination of Anthony Evans and Donovan Daniels.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Anthony Evans has learnt a lot in his short stint in Germany about how to play a little bit of football. And fair play, he did okay tonight, didn't he? And so did Daniels. But, I mean, I don't remember a lot of them because they were obviously in those sort of middle years, shall we say. that disallowed goal of Crewe, it was offside. I mean, we do seem to have, had good decisions recently, don't we? Or played a decent line. One or two goals have been chalked off for the opposition recently. But yeah, so luck seemed to be on our side. And I was just thinking, and I put on the chat, I mean, remember, this is sort of like the rope-a-dope sort of thing with boxing. We're just waiting for, to get something on the break. But as we've just mentioned, it ended up being a set piece that gave us the lead, really. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just summarising the whole game. It was one of those games where I'm just grateful for a point at the end of it, really.
Just in the build-up to their goal, I think we started playing after about half an hour. Ellis Sims, a great snapshot that stung the keeper's hands on his inside post. And that was kind of a change in direction of the flow of the first half. And I think from that moment on, we seemed to be on the front foot more in the build-up to when we scored.
I'm getting a bit of stick in the chat about my negative comments, but to be honest, I think for the way we played in that first 30 minutes, they were deserved. There was literally only one team in the game, and we're at home. We're on a good run, and I just expect a little bit more from us. I don't necessarily think we're going to be the best team at all times, but that first 30 minutes was so one-sided. I wouldn't even like to see the stats up to that point. I know they had 60% possession in the first half, but we had to be fair, after 30 minutes, and I think Nick's right, it seemed to coincide with when Daniels went off. It just seemed to maybe it just took them a little bit to readjust the team or whatever, but we seem to come into it. Ellis has a decent shot, which sort of maybe was always going wide, but it was, the keeper had to get down for it, didn't he? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, really, we've got Garbett putting a decent corner in, and that's why we need him in the team, because we need someone with that ability. And Bollard comes in and heads home. And listen, get it right, it was completely against the run of play. But from that point onwards, for the rest of the half, I think we were the better side, and we started to take the game to them a bit more, as we had been doing perhaps for the 3, 4, 5 minutes before that. So it was good to see, and we were starting to show that we were in the game, and we were there to try and get something out of the game. And so I was quite pleased with that last 15 minutes, and I was hoping we were going to push on in the second half and make it tell. But yeah, I've got to say, I mean, and it's not necessarily disrespectful. I just thought they were so good in that first 30 minutes. It was frightening, and every credit to them for it. And John, you called it the start of the season, didn't you? I thought I'd get it in before he did.
You have. I was just going to say.
It just takes a little bit of heat out of it.
Okay, Nick. So as we alluded to before, the bongs were switched around from pre-match to half-time this time, and I thought we came out quite brightly in the start of the second half. And one of the key moments in the first half, so the start of the second half, was that weird free kick.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen. I've seen some walls with gaps in them, but not necessarily as intentionally as that. It was a first for me, that in, I don't know, nearly 40 years of watching football. And I think if we'd have scored from it, there'd have been questions asked of that defensive wall, definitely.
It was interesting, though, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Obviously, keeper standing in the middle of it. You kind of look at it and think, right, yeah, I sort of get it. It just looked strange, though, because I don't know
you
about
can
you
see
guys.
Everything, and you're blocking off both sides. Two players.
Greenall was quite impressed with it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He just said, at the end of the day, sometimes with the wall, you're blocking the keeper's sight, and as long as if you get it round the wall, the keeper's unsighted, and they're more likely to score. So, and to be honest, I always think psychologically, you almost channeling the ball down that middle, aren't you? You're almost saying to the free kick taker, put it in that gap, and then obviously you're giving advantage to the keeper if they do.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, definitely. You can kind of, like you've said there, see why they did it. Unfortunately, we didn't take advantage. The keeper managed to save it, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a good save, to be fair. I thought Garbett got a decent shot off, and was Garbutt, I think, wasn't it?
It was Garbutt, yeah.
Yeah. So, he hit the target, didn't he? And made the keeper make a save. But, he didn't send it through that middle gap, did he?
No, he didn't.
No, but the encouragement is to do that, isn't it? It's almost saying, I think quite a few will think, I'm going to go straight through the middle of that. And
if you're Johnny Method, you'd have given it a go, probably.
Yeah.
You'd remember that one.
Yeah, missile.
Yeah, exactly.
Exocet missile.
Or Tony Yeboah or somebody like that. But, I think it was quite, was it Phil, I think, that said it's something that obviously the crew do from the kids level upwards. So, if that goalkeeper and half the crew team do come through the ranks, then it's obviously what, they've been used to for the last 5 or 10 years or whatever. So
I like it, though. It's innovation, isn't it?
Yeah.
New things. Good on them. 57 minutes, double substitution. Right, Tim, I'll come to you on this one. You're our substitutions man. Dimitri Mitchell for CJ Hamilton. Good to see CJ back. And Sully Kai for Ellis Sims. What do you think? Sorry,
Kai.
I know what you meant.
Mitchell and Hamilton on for Kai and Sims.
Yeah, I think your immediate thoughts when the substitutions were made were that they were positive ones. It was good to see CJ back. I think probably, if we're thinking about it, it maybe didn't quite work with him being right up top. I think because he hasn't got as much space as when he's playing on that right. And we saw,
I think, lost up top to me. I don't know why he played him there. I think his first run was on the right, wasn't it? And actually the defender did really well to keep up with him. And then he gets it right to the touchline, and then he ends up, the defender messed up and he ended up having a free cross at the centre, didn't he? Which I don't think anything came of it. But it showed that he's still got the pace. Obviously, I think we all had our hearts in our mouths wondering whether he might pull up. But he didn't. And I think once he gets through that first one, psychologically through that first full pelt run in a game, then hopefully we're looking at him. I think they've been quite cautious about when they returned him, because as we all know from our walking football exploits, John, that you play with a dodgy hammy and you can it goes again.
You can be taking an early bath again, can't you? So
just as an aside, very quickly, I've just almost signed up for a personal trainer in lieu of
saw you on Facebook.
Yeah. I need to do some strength training for the benefit of everyone watching this.
Is this before you return to walking football?
Yeah, that's right. I've had like 4 different muscle injuries in hamstrings and calves. So yeah. But this substitution, I think, Matt, I'll come to you. Did we really need to do this at this time? Because we looked okay, and I think it kind of ruined the momentum. Not momentum, but it seemed to knock us.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any need to do any substitutions. And in fact, when I saw the substitutions were going to happen, there was talk of, Garbutt being potentially holding his groin again and all this sort of stuff. And when I saw Mitchell on the sideline, I thought, well, he's going to swap Mitchell and Garbutt. But I didn't think Sims had done anything wrong particularly. He was he had a fairly decent game. There was times when it didn't stick and times when it did stick. And when it did, I thought he played all right, and he was being a bit of a link to the from the back to the front, really. So it was a little bit odd for me, and just very early it seemed in the second half, and at the wrong time as well, because we were playing okay. We were under no sort of threat at all from Crewe in that first 10 minutes or so, and it just it took the steam out of what we had, really. Very, very strange couple of substitutions. You could argue that maybe Kai again was fairly anonymous, but was he anonymous enough to come off after 55 minutes? I don't think so. I think another 5 or 10 minutes wouldn't have hurt necessarily. And like I say, I thought Sims coming off was just a bit strange, really, because if anything, he's the only one that's ever going to hold the ball up for us, isn't he? I mean, he's no Gary Medine, we know that, but Jerry Yates doesn't offer you that. That's not his game. CJ Hamilton coming on, well, that's not his game particularly. And like we all know, CJ Hamilton's a right winger. He's not a central player necessarily. So, just a bit of a head scratcher one from me, really.
Yeah, I mean, what formation were we playing? It looked like a 4-4-2 for me with Hamilton up top.
He was playing centre forwards for me. Yeah, he was playing centre forwards.
I mean, Nick or Tim, it kind of looked like a fish out of water for me. Surely it'd been better to drop.
Yeah, but he didn't know. I suppose he
Right.
might in his defence to Critchley. I think he will probably seen it as a positive substitution because I think he probably thought, particularly with CJ, that play him on the last man. He only needs. I said to my Elliot actually, we only need him to get through once, and nobody's going to touch him for dust, are they? But it didn't happen, and partially that was because I think we started to tire in other parts of the pitch. So I'm quick enough to have a go, but I think CJ was reasonably anonymous, and I don't think Sims was having his best game. So I think he saw it as a potential to go on and get that second goal and hopefully put the result beyond doubt. So I'm not going to be too critical, but maybe there was another decision to make shortly after that maybe would have got us the 3 points, and we didn't do that, which it was to bring Dougal on and strengthen that central midfield. I think you could have gone 3 in there, or you could have just dropped. I know I'm not saying Virtue had a bad game, but I think there was a point where we needed to think about fresh legs in there and about how we might keep the ball better than we were doing. Now, to be fair, that wasn't obvious on 57, 60 minutes. It was obvious by, I think we said on the chat, didn't we? A few people, there was about 4 people at the same time said 75 minutes Dougal, and 75 minutes was really 70 because of all the extra, or even 65 with all the extra time added on. And I think that was the point where we, because I think at one point he'd sent Dougal off running down the line, hadn't he? And he'd warmed him up, and they were saying that he'd had an extensive warm up. So he must have been thinking about it, and then he changed his mind for whatever reason. I think we had this long stoppage, didn't we, with the linesman and all the chaos that ensued with that. And once the game got restarted, we just seemed to go downhill again. It was like you said, I think it was almost like I don't know what you call it, the polar opposite of the first half, wasn't it? Where we were, putting it bluntly, crap the first 30, and we were crap for the last 30 as well.
So, Nick, obviously this is this weird situation with the linesman. I think we were kind of on the front foot at the time, and that's kind of taking the wind out of ourselves a bit. And it was pretty much all Crewe from then on in.
It was, yeah. It took a while to sort it out. I think, like we were saying earlier on, it's happened once before, and there's usually someone in the crowd who can do it. Well, obviously that's not an option when there's nobody there, and you end up with
his mates or something at a game. I seem to remember this happening.
Who? Sorry,
one of Hoggy's mates. I think it wasn't even Hoggy. Wasn't he a certified ref or?
I remember it happening in the at one point at Bloomfield Road, but
surely they've got contingencies in place for this. They must.
Well, it seemed to take a while, didn't it? And then, it did. Along with the subs, it just seemed to disrupt us, and we couldn't get going again. And I think someone said in the chat before, it was a bit like it was against Rochdale, where we just, we're not seeing a lot of the ball, and when we did, we weren't great with it. There was the odd bit. CJ got down the right once, but it was a bit frustrating, really. And the longer it went on, and I saw 10 minutes go up, I was thinking, it's going to be a long 10 minutes. It was no surprise to see them get back into it. I know we'll talk about whether it was offside. Unfortunately, you don't get the camera angle to see, do you, at the point where the ball's played. By the time it was through, he did look like he was offside, but we'll never know. But you can't really begrudging that equaliser because it was coming in. I thought it was well deserved over the 90 minutes, really.
Matt, the goal was coming, and we did have a warning and a let off on 80 minutes when I'm not going to pronounce his name, Adishabi, left unmarked from a corner, free header, and he's got up and he's just looped it over the bar, and that was a warning, wasn't it? And we didn't take heed from it.
No, on that particular corner, I was shouting rather loudly at the television, particularly, and I'll say his name again. I don't mean to be like public enemy number one, but Thornley was just stood there watching the ball go over his head. And fortunately, the guy just sort of, got underneath it and headed it over. But if he hadn't have headed it in, there was another one, at least Crewe player there as well. And we just didn't seem to be set up right at that corner at all.
It was decent delivery. It was Garber-esque player.
Yeah, Chiz's best mate from Blackpool.
Lowry.
Wasn't it? Yeah,
Lowry,
no, it was
Pickering, was it?
Pickering, yeah. So, that was a half chance, well, more than a half chance, and possibly could have conceded then. But then when the goal came, I was hopeful that we were going to hang on, but I just never saw us keeping a clean sheet from the first minute onwards tonight. It was probably just a surprise as long as it took Crewe to score against us. But was it offside? I don't know, because we just don't get the benefit. Yeah, we just don't get the benefit. But the way that the ball was being played over the back two in particular tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if they did get through and it was a legitimate goal. And yeah, it was just disappointing really, because it's just Route 1 stuff, isn't it really? And we didn't seem to be able to cope with it all night.
I think the linesman seemed to have a little bit of an issue with holding that flag, so maybe he wasn't that keen on putting it up either.
Yeah,
it was the reserve linesman though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it's very difficult, isn't it? Because by the time you've seen the ball go over the top, and it came from their half, didn't it? Well, the ball's already left, so you need to see the point the ball's left foot, not the point that it's received, and we're just never going to see that angle. And but your immediate thoughts are it's offside. My second thought was, what the hell are we doing trying to play an offside trap against their defence with it was only 4 minutes of normal time, wasn't it? So there's still 14 minutes to go. Why are we doing that? And why are we, we stood on the halfway line holding our hands up when, we should be, staying goal side of them. But I suspect it probably was onside because it was such a long ball through. But I don't know.
That's what said there. Thornley's Achilles heel balls over the top, and Crewe worked this out and exploited it. I mean, that's what
scares me about Thornley. I'll be honest. Since I saw him last year against Oxford, it was exactly the same. And you don't gain pace, or he just doesn't seem to read the game as quickly as others, in my opinion. So
it was Ballard's. It was Ballard's man, though, wasn't it? My recollection is, as it came over, it was Ballard who was chasing after him, holding his hand up. But yeah, I know what you mean. But they were playing that, weren't they? They must have done that ball 15, 20 times during the game, mustn't they? Easily. Yeah. And it was clearly a game plan that loop the ball behind the back of the defence, get behind the back of them, and that's where our weakness is. And it proved to be the case, didn't it?
Yeah, I think we're probably all agreed that that isn't our best centre-half partnership between now and the end of the season and what we've had previously. So hopefully one or two might come back from injury. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Saturday.
A comment from Raggy there. Evening, Raggy. Mr. Marvin tonight, my favourite player of the season so far. Nick,
Coach Critchley's noticeable by his absence tonight, isn't he?
Yeah. Where are you, Coach? Just because you've not won. Want to face the music. Yeah, Nick, I think if we'd have had Big Marv in the team tonight, do you think there'd have been a different result?
Quite possibly. I think we'd have been a bit steadier and not as susceptible to that ball from, the first minute onwards, really.
Balls over the box, we were worried.
Yeah, and I think at the other end as well, it's another game that's crying out for Gary Medine, isn't it? I think we probably wouldn't have had that first half an hour and maybe not second half an hour or the last half an hour of the game, so to speak, if he'd have been there, because he's a focal point and he can hold the ball up and bring others into play. And we really, really missed him. And we'll miss Marv. I don't know how is Marv rest of the season, do we know, or have we not heard for definite yet?
Long term.
Hopefully we've got Gretterson coming back towards fitness, though, haven't we? So that gives us another option in there.
Yeah,
as well,
definitely expect him to.
We have got a lot of our key players out, haven't we? As Tim said there, the Viking, Big Marv, Medine, CJ. So Husband as well. I mean, what's the score with Husband?
I think there's some suggestion he might be back for a weekend, isn't there?
Yeah, I think they said if not tonight, Saturday. So hopefully.
Barnes just said you don't mention the Yates sitter to make it 2-0. What was that?
Yeah, it's a ball coming from the right-hand side, wasn't it? And he just did it was sort of not quite a funny height for him, but he didn't make any connection with it. And that was the one where, did Kai have the shot as well? Yeah.
Kai again today, not done a lot for me. What's everyone else think? I mean, how does he keep getting this running the side? I think it's time for change. He's been inconsistent, and
I think it's just the fact that we haven't got that many options on the left, have we? But maybe it's time to look at those other options, because it just, to me, we knew we had our backs to the wall in that first half, and there was a bit of a joke on the thread, wasn't there? Like, after 20 minutes, is it time to make a sub? But the reality was, if I was going to make a sub, it would have been, you'd never probably do it at that stage, but it would have been Kai you'd have pulled, because it's, when your back's to the wall, he's just no good to you, is he? You want players who are going to dig in, stick the foot in, and keep possession for you when you got it. And whilst he can do some good stuff in a game like that, when you're on the defensive, he's not going to add value, and he didn't tonight, unfortunately.
He's already said there, Mitchell start on the left for me. Nick, I think that's a fair shout for the next game. Whereas Phil, where's Phil? Here he is.
I thought he might come. To be fair, I think I didn't see the Charlton game, but I think prior to that he had 3 or 4 where he'd been quite influential and looked a little bit more back to, not about his best, but a bit more consistent for a run of games. But yeah, tonight it didn't really happen for him. But that's been the case, I think, throughout his Blackpool career, hasn't it? You'll get 2 or 3 good games and then a bit of an anonymous one. Mitchell's probably a good shout. He only tends to get cameo appearances, doesn't he? It would be good to see him get a start and maybe get a bit of a run in the side, because he gets on the front foot. He's got excellent pace. I think someone said in the chat there, him down one side and CJ on the other would certainly cause teams problems.
So at the end of the day, we've come up against a very good Crewe side tonight. We are missing key players, and I think everything considered, it was a decent point.
Listen, what they say, if you play poor and don't lose, that's a sign of a team with, who's going to do all right in a season, and that's as, I wouldn't say it's one of the poorest performances we've had this season, but it's from a possession point of view at home, and from the point of view of how much influence we had on the game compared with the opposition, it's up there with the poorest, because they dominated for 60 minutes. And so you've got to be disappointed with that, but you've equally got to be quite happy that you came out of it with a draw, because a Blackpool team from the start of the season would have lost that game without a shadow of a doubt. No doubt about it. It was like, if it had been the team that played Gillingham, the team that played Lincoln, whoever it might have been, would have lost that game. And so I think we can take some comfort from that, because I tell you what, one thing you saw from that game, and I think it was the same for both sides, nobody can accuse anybody of not putting the effort in. The effort was there. It was just the technical side of our game that was a bit lacking tonight, I would say. But then it was full pelt, wasn't it, for the full 111 minutes or whatever it was that was played, 101 minutes that was played.
So, Nick, Matt, just to surmise the game before we move on to players' ratings. Nick, I'll come to you first. Surmise the game, and where do we go from here?
Well, I think like Matt said, or Tim said, we've not played particularly well, but we've got a point. So overall, we've got to be happy with that, and it could be a crucial point when we look back at the end of the season. We shall see. We've come up against a very good footballing side. And we've managed to get a point out of it. So I think overall we've got to just try and take the positives, and we're on a good run still, aren't we? We're averaging, I don't know what they said on Saturday on Quest, I think it's something like 2 points a game for the last however many games it was.
18
games, yeah. So there's still a lot to be positive about. We've got CJ back. Gary Medine should be back for Saturday. So let's take the positives out of it, and hopefully we can get 3 points against Wimbledon, isn't it, on Saturday, I think?
See Wimbledon. Okay, let's move on to the player ratings. Matt, start with you. Chris Maxwell. Now, today for me, it was a bit flappy, a bit nervy.
Yeah, I thought his distribution was fairly average tonight. He said he obviously had that very good save in the first few minutes, didn't he, off the Crewe lad when he hit it over, tipped it over the bar.
And the one from our defender as well when it came off our defender and he had to
scramble it away. I won't say the name of the defender because I get slated for it apparently. But I mean, it was a slightly below average performance by his own usual high standards. So I think a 6 out of 10 wouldn't be too far away, really.
Jordan Gabriel, Tim, is consistently good as ever. IMO.
Yeah, I thought him and Bollard were probably the pick of the defenders today. Not sure his distribution was as good as it has been, but that's I think he had a tough task down that. All right, there left, didn't he? They were, it was like the Alamo at times, wasn't it? In relation, they were doubling up, and he was still. They didn't get behind him very often. So I think it's a 7 for Jordan tonight. That's my assessment of his performance, which is a good score.
Nick scoring his first goal in Tangerine. Centre half, Dan Bollard.
Yeah, had a bit of a tough time tonight at times.
Big unit up again, 6'2".
Yeah. His distribution wasn't great, but he scored a goal as well. So he's got us the point. I think without that, I maybe would have gone a 6, but I'll sneak it up to a 7 for the fact that he's notched.
Excellent, and this isn't by design, Matt. You've got Jordan Thornley.
Well, I think I could probably just repeat what Nick said minus the goal, really. So bearing in mind he was going to give 6 without the goal, I'll give him 6 then. And that's being generous, I think, really, quite frankly.
Go on, give him 5. You know you want to.
No. He wasn't.
I don't care what those people in the chat say.
It wasn't that bad. It was just not up to our usual high standards. There's not many. I don't think there's many that I've given. I think maybe I give Dougal 5 harshly the other week, perhaps, didn't I? But he's been dropped since, so I've been proved right anyway. So.
Luke Garbett, Tim, made the goal.
Yeah, I mean, he was involved in everything good we did in that top half of the field, wasn't he? He's had a decent free kick. He's taken. His corners were good tonight. Defended okay. I think they had a tough night tonight, the lads at the back, to be fair. I don't think the midfield particularly helped them. And when you've got Kai in front of you, you're always got a harder task on your hand, I think, when we're on the defensive. So I think he did okay. So I'm going to go 7. 7.
Matty Virtue, Nick.
I thought he put a decent shift in.
Just remembered.
You what? Sorry, John. You broke up then.
He was the sponsors man of the match, apparently.
Was he? Right. Well, he was probably not far off mine, to be honest. I think him and maybe Ward. I thought Ward had a decent game. I'm going to go... I'll push it to an 8 for Matty Virtue.
Neil's putting a Virtue's immature flashes annoy. Bookings cost. It was a bit silly when he threw that ball away. It irked me ever so slightly. Yeah.
Fair point.
Okay, where are we on now? Kevin Stewart, Matt.
I think he had a decent-ish game. One of those games where he really could have stamped his authority a little bit more on it. But I mean,
did he look a bit tired? Maybe it's time to drop.
Possibly, sort of faded a wee bit, perhaps. But I mean, it was it was sort of middle of the roadish, really. Nothing outstanding. Got a good few touches. Tried to link back to front. So I'd give him a 7 out of 10.
Grant Ward, Tim. As I put on the chat, slagging off his crossing, then he delivered 2 absolutely killer balls into the box after that.
Yeah. He sort of had a bit of a mixed game for me, I thought. He did some really good stuff, and then, but he was part of this mid. I just felt the midfield was disjointed. Going back to Stewart, I thought in that last 15 minutes, the first half, Stewart was playing really well, but I almost didn't hardly saw him in the first 30 minutes. It was like the game was passing him by a bit, and
probably goes with everybody, doesn't it, tonight?
Yeah. It's a bit of a weird one. I think I'm going to go 6, but it's a 6+. It's just below a 7. It could have. I might have sneaked a 7 in, but to be honest, I think 6 about right for me tonight with him.
I'd like to see Grant Moore pushed in the middle for the next game. Stick CJ out there. That's another story. Matty Virtue, Nick. Not sorry, Matty Virtue. Kakai.
I'm going to go a 6.
I was going to do that as well. That's what was in my head. Any reasons why? Just to elaborate ever slightly.
Well, there's not much to talk about, is there? I think didn't really happen for him tonight. There wasn't many talking points where he'd got on the ball. And I know we can have the debate about what is his best position, and he probably isn't being played in it. But I didn't think there was a great deal from him for me tonight, so I can't go higher than a 6.
Yeah, I think you're being generous.
Maybe I am. Yeah, he didn't get a lot of, as Phil's just said there. He hardly had the ball.
Sometimes you've got to go and get it, though, haven't you?
You do. I'm sticking with a 6.
No, I'm not disagreeing, but I would have probably said of our outfield players, he was the least effective. I would have thought. But Pisces is with me for once tonight. He's disagreeing with everything else I've said. So.
Who are we on now? Ellis Sims, Matt.
I didn't think he did an awful lot wrong, particularly before getting hoiked off after 50-odd minutes.
I'd say just subbing him kind of had a very detrimental effect on the team and the performance. So,
I mean, like I said earlier, some things stuck, some things didn't. But I mean, he's a kid, and he's no Gary Medine in that regard, is he? But equally, I didn't think there was any need for him to be taken off as early as he did. But given that he's only played 60 minutes or thereabouts, I suppose you can only give him like 6 out of 10, really.
Right, Tim, just to round things off.
There's a bit of a pattern developing here, isn't there? I mean, I think Yates. I love Yates, and he was still. I mean, the one thing you'll always get out of him is 100% performance-wise. I don't think it was quite happening for him tonight. I don't think he got a lot of service. I think he was chasing shadows a lot of the time. I was hoping that we might get a Yates special out of him to seal what would have been a 2-0 win. Didn't quite happen. So some good little touches. But in the main, he was just closing down, and that was the majority of what he was doing today, and that's no reflection of him. That's a reflection of people further back. But it's got to be a 6 because there was nothing outstanding in relation to what he did, and we were just overall we're second best mostly all over the park. I think somebody said in the chat, how many of our players would have got into Crewe's team tonight, and I think the short answer is not many.
We rate the subs because I think they had enough game time, didn't they? So let's just do that quickly. Next, CJ Hamilton. How do you think he did in his reintroduction into the side?
Maybe wasn't the best position for him to play in when he came on, and it was a bit difficult. I think it's hard to kind of go as high as a 7. I don't know. I mean, he had that chance that, to be fair, he probably wasn't expecting to come to him. That he snatched at a bit. Had that run where he'd just come on, and you're all thinking, hopefully his hamstring's going to hold up, and it did. But it was a bit difficult for him. I'll go 6 out of 10. But it's just great to see him back.
Harsh from Richard. 4.
I'm not going that low.
No.
There you go. Steve Hutchins bounced it out 7 for the 7. Matt Dimitri Mitchell. Wasn't his usual self, was he?
He was fairly anonymous, wasn't he? Really, when he came on. So I mean, maybe Richard wants to give him a 4, which I wouldn't disagree with necessarily. 4 or 5, perhaps, out of 10. Can't remember an awful lot he did, if I'm brutally honest.
To move on now from the ratings to man of the match. Sometimes, Tim, it's a tough one, this, and I think it's another tough one today because not one player stood out for me.
No, I think I was just thinking that myself. I'm thinking around the pitch and thinking who stood out, who created the most positivity, and I'm struggling a little bit. I think probably I'd go Virtue just for the fact that he put himself about a bit, but it's all much of a much. I think the fact that we've got so many sixes and generous sevens is probably it's an overall reflection of the fact that we're outgunned all over the park, but probably just about for the fact that he was covering a lot of ground in midfield.
Nick?
Matty Virtue for me. I think I gave him the highest score of tonight, possibly. He put a real shift in. You could see at the end he was tiring, and it's no surprise. I thought he was probably our best player, not the best player on the pitch, because I think it was probably a Crewe player. But for us, I think he was our best player. And I'd say I think Ward had a good game as well, but I'm going to give it Matty Virtue.
Matt?
Equally a difficult sort of one to choose, really. But you're talking sort of thin lines between one player and the next, aren't you? In the midfield, I thought Virtue, Stewart, and Ward were okay, and that's being sort of fairly generous in terms of like you say, the marks that have been given. But I thought Ward actually had a tidy game, and I critiqued his lack of crossing on Saturday, and he did actually put a few decent crosses in the box today. So I'll give it Grant Ward.
Give it Gabriel. Let's move on to the quick look at the league table before we head off. So Tim, we're now 13th on 44 points. Oh, we were doing 6. We're 8 off the player, so it's not done us that much damage, has it? This
no, and listen, we're not. We're disappointed that we've not won a game, but equally, we could say it's a point gain tonight, I think, and on another night we'd have lost that. There's some people saying on the chat they didn't think we're outgunned, but they didn't watch the same game as me, because for large parts of it we were. And sometimes you've got to doff your cap to the opposition and say that they were better than you on the night. And, next time we play them, hopefully we're better than them. But tonight, I was very, very impressed with them. And I just think that's a point gained. I think we're going to Wimbledon, isn't it, on Saturday? And we need to make sure that we get 3 points and get those greens back on the board. And keep that average up, and we will keep that average up if we're taking 4 points out of every 2 games.
Nick, if you look at the table, we're 1 point behind Crewe, but we've got 4 games on them, and we've got to take the positives from the fact that we're 1 point behind such a good and accomplished team as Crewe.
Definitely, the more I think about it, they're probably. I know Ipswich gave us a lesson at Bloomfield Road, didn't we? But we were a different team then. I think they're probably the best side of us in this season. So when you look at it like that, we've taken a point without playing particularly well. So let's take the positives from it. And if we win on Saturday, 7 points from 3 games, I think we'd all have taken that, wouldn't we?
Matt, if we look at the league table there, AFC Wimbledon 21st, 29 points.
Yep.
Team to be playing, good team to have a response against.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of inconsistency, isn't there, throughout that division? And you'd think that Wimbledon are there to hopefully get 3 points off. Again, you're looking at the results tonight. There's been 1 or 2 surprises, I think. Everybody had written Doncaster off, didn't they, prior to kickoff, probably? Lost the manager and then ended up winning. Lincoln City losing at home to our neighbours down the road. Bit of a coup and buster, I would have thought, for quite a few. So, there's going to be still a lot of strange results to to come around. We've obviously just got to concentrate on ourselves. But you'd like to think that perhaps one or two who weren't playing tonight would be involved in Saturday, which won't necessarily upset any sort of apple cart. It might just give a little bit of freshness to the team that have obviously played two pretty tough two tough games in 3 days. So let's go into it positively at the weekend and get 3 points and go above Crewe and Plymouth and one or two others hopefully.
Just a bit of fun before we go. Phil's been asking for this twice now in the comments, so I think it's an additional facet to our output this evening. Rate the manager. I think it's something about quite fun thing to do and quite insightful. So Matt, let's start with you. Player ratings, manager ratings. What do you think for the manager's rating?
Well, I mean, if you can compare him to is it David Artell, the Crewe manager?
Great game with that board.
He did. He obviously mastered that as well as getting the upper hand against us. Really. So I think you can probably give him what was our average sort of score. Really, it was like 6 out of 10. I guess. Really, like I said before, I think he got the substitutions wrong, and I think he possibly could have thought about more proactive or different substitutions as the game progressed as well, perhaps. So. 6 out of 10. I think 3 is being a bit harsh, even by Phil's standards.
There's no run chases on this show, Phil. I like this manager rating. I'm just going to add it. There you go. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, a little bit like what Matt said. I mean, he was out thought by. His opposition today, wasn't he? Let's get it right. I wasn't too critical of the substitutions when they were made, but we did lose momentum after that, and I think we missed a trick in not bringing the talisman on, and I think if we brought him on, we might have by hook or by crook held out in that game, as ill deserved as it would have been. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go 5.
Ooh. Phil's train of thought there. Nick, over to you. What do you think?
I thought the subs were early. I can understand it. If CJ coming on and if he set one up or we scored, then we'd all be saying fantastic. But he took that chance doing it early and it didn't pay off and it disrupted us. So I'm not going to go as low as a 5. I think I'll go 6.
5's average. It's not, if 4's poor, but 5's average. I've not been too critical, but I see 6 as a positive, and I just thought,
yeah.
And again, like we've said,
that's all.
Crewe are just a very good side, aren't they? Mm. We've got to give them credit.
You've been very interactive tonight, Phil. I think it's time you made another appearance on this show. So DM me after and we'll get you back on. Right, Matt, just before we go, let's get your rating for Mr. Critch. Coach Critchley. Did you?
I did, mate. Yes. 6.
Who's not? We've all done. I have not done mine.
You.
I'll do a 5+, Tim. A 5+.
I was probably 5+, to be fair.
Right, and on that note, I think we're on it now, so we'll go. We've got the match reaction. We've got a Friday night preview coming on Friday, so stay tuned for that, listeners. Do like this show if you're watching on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It'll be appreciated. Anything else before we go? Tim,
I just want to give a bit of a shout out for our new Monday night show. I thought the lads on the 3rd tier, associate show, shall we call it, I thought they did a really good job. It was really informative. I tuned in. It's not the type of show I normally listen to, but I was quite engaged with it, and I thought the guy from Gillingham is good value for money, isn't he? And hopefully it's going to go from strength to strength, but it's worth people thinking about listening in and giving it a go, because it's something a bit different to what we normally do, and hopefully it's got some legs.
The 3rd tier, listeners, every Monday on this channel. Tom, Matt from the Gillingham podcast, and Ben. Yep. So that's going to be going from strength to strength, hopefully. As Sean just said, yeah, Tom was a terrific host. He made his debut in the host. He was a bit worried, but he did a superb job. Excellently trained by someone, you may say.
Who's that? I have to laugh at the comments there from Bisons. He said, because you said we've got a Friday night pod coming up on Friday, and he's put, are you sure the Friday night preview show is on Friday?
Yeah, you sit there and criticise Bisons. What have you done? Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Up the pool.
Up the pool.
Up the pool.